Welcome to Personal Injury Marketing Minute.
Welcome to the Personal Injury Marketing Minute, where we quickly cover the hot topics in the legal marketing world. I'm your host, Lindsay Busfield, the Vice President and Partner over at Optimize My Firm. Today, I'm joined by Gary Martin Hayes, the founding partner of the law offices of Gary Martin Hayes and Associates in Georgia. Gary has spent more than 3 decades building a highly recognized personal injury practice, and his focus on the Spotlight on PIMM presentation is going to be developing TBI cases and how attorneys can spot them and what to do with them once they have identified. So, Gary, thank you so much for joining us today. Excited to hear about your upcoming PIMM presentation and learn a little bit more about TBI cases.
Yeah, well, Lindsay, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the presentation in San Antonio. Ken Hardison, PILMA, they always put on a great event and such a great learning opportunity for so many firms around the country to come and get real nuggets they can take back to their firms and implement immediately.
It is one of the best conferences, and I would dare say the best conference that we go to every year. And because it is so actionable, attorneys are getting together. They are sharing some common issues that they're seeing both in marketing as well as operations and case development. So to be able to have some of the best minds in the industry come with the goal to just share information to make the practice all that much better for everybody. So I love that. I love that you're going to be joining. So for those who aren't familiar with your practice, tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you're doing.
Yeah, gosh, I've been an attorney almost 37 years now. Started out defending insurance companies and then switched over just to represent injured victims and their families. My firm is based in Atlanta. We have 9 satellite offices around Metro Atlanta. And all we do, tractor trailer, wrongful death, personal injury claims. That's it. We recover more than $1 billion here in Atlanta and in Georgia. So been very good at it. Thankfully, knock on wood, and hopefully that will continue.
Well, and that's a really saturated market. And I know that it's pretty competitive out there. So to be able to carve out the wrongful death, tractor trailer accidents as being your bread and butter is impressive in and of itself. So that's just great.
Yeah, so, Atlanta's a competitive market for sure.
It is. It absolutely is. You've got a ton of really great law firms that are around the area, kind of all competing for the same cases.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one, but you're doing it really well. You're doing great by your clients. And now you want to share some of your insights with the PILMA attendees. And what you're talking about this year is TBI cases. So give us kind of a top level overview of what you plan on talking about.
Yeah, and just by way of background, these cases are extremely personal to me. Back, in 2003, I started having debilitating headaches. Went to the doctor, found out I had to have brain surgery. Thankfully, I had that aha moment where the headache stopped. But for our clients that have TBIs, they don't have that aha moment. And sadly, within the legal and medical community, for wrecks involving tractor trailers, car wrecks, it's been thought of kind of as a by-the-way injury. You have a fractured arm, looks like you have a herniated disc, and by the way, you have a TBI. But nobody really knew how to assess it and what to do with it. And sadly, that's been the practice for too long. And so I really want to bring awareness to what TBIs are, how attorneys can implement it in their practice to help their clients get the treatment they need, and then the financial recovery they deserve.
And I think that is a great point that's often overlooked, where you have some injuries that are really obvious, and a broken arm, well, obviously that's going to impact somebody in their ability to work if they are lifting. But to have an injury that you can't readily see, yes, it can show up on the MRI and you have the documentation to show that this injury exists. But in everyday life, if somebody is just going, I'm in pain, you kind of have to just take them at their word for it. Yeah. And unfortunately, there's bias that goes along with that.
There certainly is. And, not to put all the blame on the attorneys, the medical community, there was a study that Emory did. 56% of the people had a misdiagnosis of concussion, traumatic brain injury, when they went through the emergency room. So the doctors aren't catching it. And too many times attorneys think, well, if they had a clean CT scan or MRI scan at the emergency room, they're fine. That's not the case. 90% of the time, those are going to be within normal limits. TBIs are not structural injuries, but they're functional injuries. It's the function of the brain that is messed up, and we just can't ignore it anymore.
No, we can't. And I think part of it is starting with this awareness. And so I love that you're bringing this to the foreground here. So how can attorneys recognize TBIs when a doctor might have missed it? How can they lay the foundation for that?
Great question. Again, these are some of the things that I'm going to share at the PIMM conference. It starts with a basic intake, knowing what questions to ask. Sometimes you may ask a person, did you lose consciousness at the scene? Because we think that may be a sign of a TBI. And it can be, but sometimes our clients don't even understand what consciousness means. Let me say, no, but I know I passed out for a while. You've got to have the screening factors that your intake team reviews, or your answering service, if you're using those guys, they need to be certified in recognizing TBIs. You need to have your case management staff aware. And I'm a big advocate of bringing my clients in. I know that's old school. When I was growing up, my parents wouldn't let me or my siblings spend the night at another family's house unless my parents put their feet under the same table as the other parents to get to know them. Well, that's what I want with my clients. I want to bring them in, put our feet under the same table, ask them questions, not only about the wreck, but about their injuries, and really dig down to see if a TBI is a component of it, because it needs to be assessed and they need to be properly treated to prevent long-term ramifications. And if there's something to be done now, they need it. They deserve it.
And once you get your feet under the same table, you can get those conversations starting. And beyond just assessing the injuries, you can assess the impact. Then there's something to be said for having a face-to-face conversation and making those personal connections. It'll open up conversations that you might not have otherwise had, which is how, are these injuries impacting your life? And if you're just filling out a form going, I can't work and, I've got time to travel to the doctor, you might miss out on the things like, well, I'm a pickleball player and I can't play pickleball and this tournament was coming up and now I'm losing out on that. Or now my son or daughter is having to care for me in ways that they wouldn't have had to before. And just getting those conversations going can lead up to so many more avenues.
There's so much more that you can utilize for the benefit of the client. Not only facts about the wreck, but as you said, the effects that this wreck has had on them. Because a back injury to an accountant may not have the same effect as a back injury to a guy that has a sixth grade education and has been working in a warehouse all his life, and now he can't do it. And, again, talking about Atlanta being a competitive market, this is something for you folks throughout the country that have the big dogs coming in, the out-of-state law firms that are advertising there. Your unique selling proposition is, hey, they aren't here. In my ads, I encourage our folks, take the phone challenge. See if you can get those guys on TV, on the billboard. See if you can get them on the phone. Chances are you won't, because they don't live here. They don't have a licensed practice law here. I'm here every day meeting with my clients. So it certainly develops that rapport between you and your client, but it's the right thing to do by them anyway.
And so let's say you get this conversation going and you find out maybe there's some injuries that were missed. Maybe there was a missed TBI, these headaches, they haven't gone away. How do you encourage your client to go and get the documentation that they need to prove that they have this injury?
Yeah, I'm going to introduce everyone to the company that we use. It's called Braincushion. One of the, and I hate to say it this way, but one of the great things that came out of COVID was the ability for doctors around the country to use telehealth, and for the federal rules to say that's got to be treated the same as an in-person office visit. So the company, Braincushion, uses telehealth. They have the person take the impact concussion test, which is what the NFL uses. More than 800 colleges and universities use it, the NFL, the National Basketball Association, NASCAR. This is what they use for all of the athletes to get a baseline. And then if they have what they think may be a concussion, they compare the baseline study to the post-concussive problems. A database of over 28 million patients. So the person takes an online test and they see how somebody their age, their sex, ranks now in light of the symptoms that they're having compared to someone that did not have a TBI. And then they have that telehealth appointment with a neuropsychologist or neurologist to see, all right, this is what the test said. Let me see what kind of problems you're having. And as a result, this is something that I would highly recommend you do, be it follow up with a neurologist. Here's a prescription. Let's go get some vestibular therapy. Again, it's recognizing it early and making sure they get the treatment they need, because a TBI is the beginning of a long-term degenerative process. Today's the best day they're going to have. Tomorrow, it's going to be a little worse and a little worse and a little worse. There was a VA study. It was published in the Journal of American Medicine, the neurology paper. They studied 350,000 veterans who sustained what they called a mild traumatic brain injury. And mild is subjective. This is your brain, first of all, would not be mild. But they found those people had a 2-time increase, a double the increase of the risk of dementia because of a TBI. So this is nothing to mess around with, not at all.
And clearly, as you said, I mean, even a mild one is going to have some really profound impacts on somebody's life. And I mean, clearly it's horrific for the victim, but let's talk about how it impacts the case and how it impacts, I mean, the basics of building the case, but as well as the damages that are coming out, and talk us through how much it could be worth on the other side of it.
Yeah, well, from the patient's perspective, they have that test, they have that telehealth appointment, and for them, it's confirmation. I do have a problem.
Right.
I know I wasn't feeling myself. They'd go in a room, forget why they walked in there and walk back out, and then remember it, go back in and forget it again. And also hearing from the family members. That's one thing that we do. We'll talk to family members and friends to help develop, okay, what were they like before and what are they like now? Mm-hmm. How has life changed because of it? So there is that affirmation of the patient. You're not just imagining this. There is an issue, and here are things that we can do to help you. And Brain Cushion will also work with them by providing information for the family members. Here's a way to help them through these dark times, so there can be progress at the end.
Well, and that's a great point, because that invisible injury is not just for the insurance company, and it's not just impacting them, but yes, it impacts the whole family. So,
and when you're putting this in front of a jury, the National Football League, the concussion lawsuits, they have educated the jury. They know the extreme problems that somebody can have with this. I mean, dementia is nothing to mess around with. My mom was an Alzheimer's patient for 5 years. I saw that decline, and that's what can happen to somebody that has sustained a TBI. So anytime you have a tractor trailer wreck, because of the weight of that vehicle, the forces involved, you automatically need to assume there's a TBI here unless proven otherwise. If there was an airbag deployment, that in and of itself is an explosive concussive event. That's somebody that should be screened. Again, not every case is going to be here, but if you have a high-speed collision, you have airbag deployment, significant damage, if you have complaints of headaches at the emergency room, their head hit something within the confines of the vehicle, you immediately need to know this person needs to get assessed. In terms of building the claim, get those photos. Get the before and after witnesses. We'll do that via Zoom, Skype. We'll record that. That's made a part of our demand package to let the folks know we're ready to go to trial if we need to, because these people have seen what this person's like before and they see how they are now. And it's a shell of a person. And in our brains, that's what makes us who we are. Not only our intellect, but our emotion, our interaction with people. And if that is messed up, they do become a changed person.
And that's so true. And it just has a profound impact on every part of their lives, their relationships, their ability to work, their ability to just enjoy life in general. And I'm sure that having a TBI also impacts the other parts of their recovery. Even if, if they've got a broken bone, having that being compounded with having a head injury and having additional pain, it just exacerbates the recovery process as a whole. Would you think?
It definitely does. They'll forget to take the medicine. They'll forget the doctor's appointments. And you brought up one important point too about exacerbating the symptoms. That's one of the reasons why the doctors that do this prefer the telehealth. They don't want the patient driving, if they've got a TBI first of all, or they don't want them being a passenger in a vehicle with all the stimuli they're going to encounter on the way to the doctor's office. They're already jacked up with all those sensory overloads. They want them in a state where they are in their natural state. They're seeing what that person is like without all those external influences coming in on them. And they get a true picture of what the problems are. So that's why I'm a big fan of the telehealth here, as are so many of the doctors with the brick and mortar offices around Metro Atlanta. They would rather do it via TBI.
Right. You get to see the patient essentially in a vacuum and
via telehealth, rather. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you get a more of an accurate depiction without everything else going on with it. And so from the attorney's perspective and kind of the case outcome perspective, looking at the damages that accumulate through this, can we talk a little bit about the value of those as it pertains to the case?
Yeah, it's a case by case basis in a sense. And one thing I love about Braincush, they have a very inexpensive test. I get hit all the time for people coming in, hey, we've got this latest, greatest TBI technology that we use, and it's $20,000. Well, Georgia has a $25,000 policy. So if somebody has a minimum limits, why are we going to use a $20,000 test? But the Braincushion test is certainly economical. Braincushion was founded by doctors and attorneys to serve the needs of the personal injury community. The patients need it. The attorneys certainly need it to help document the case, but it needs to be affordable. So you're getting a great test that's economical. If you can send the demand or you send a letter to the adjuster saying, hey, I've got a TBI, and here's the documentation on it, and they don't tender, oh my goodness, we have opened up so many policies here in Georgia with bad faith because we let them know ahead of time, this is what we got. You're not going to tender. That's great. And we've gotten, I got $1 million settlement off of one of these things for a $25,000 policy that they blew. So it's important, and that's one of the things I'm going to give to folks. I'm going to give them the same documents that I use to help bill my claim. I hate going to seminars where you get the attorneys that they're just giving war stories. Well, I got this amount, and I got that amount, and they're doing it just so they can get the cases. That's not right. I want to give people start to finish, this is what we do, this is how we do it, these are your exact letters and the exact progression that you need. So again, you can take it and immediately implement it in your practice. And not just you, stuff that you can give to your staff. So everybody's on the same page, moving the case forward.
And that's one of the things I love about PILMA is we have great speakers like you who have done this. You have figured out what is important. You have figured out how to build the case. You've figured out what is going to add value. And you're willing to share that information to help the legal community, to help the clients that they have that have been impacted by this.
Well, and great point. Bottom line, the clients deserve it. They deserve this. But it's not something I feel like I need to keep to myself, because if we all understand the severity of the TBIs, the importance of assessing it and making it a part of the demand package so that client is taken care of from now till they pass, because they are going to have some difficult times ahead. I want everybody to have the same knowledge, because if we increase the case value on all of these cases, it's the rising tide's going to lift all boats. Let's do it because the patients deserve it.
They do. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all that information. I can't wait to hear more from your presentation at PILMA in May this year in San Antonio. Check it out. Also, please subscribe to other episodes. Check out the rest of the Spotlight on PILMA series. We've got some great presenters sharing some really wonderful knowledge to help the tide raise all the boats here. And Gary, thank you so much for coming on today. I can't wait to meet you in person in a couple months, maybe put our feet under the same table and say hey.
Lindsay, I look forward to it. And thanks for the time. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.